Hey everybody, so I'm back and this is going to be my labor and delivery story. If you didn't see my last update, I had the baby. Today is March 14th and I had the baby on March 11th, really early in the morning, and it was a girl and her name is Cassidy Leila, and she's doing awesome. Thank goodness that she's healthy, and we were able to come home 2 days ago, just a day after I had her. So as you can see, I'm very relieved, very happy, and just thankful that she's okay. So this video is going to be kind of my story of what happened during labor and delivery. I did get footage of the actual birth, so that will be coming, but I figured it'd be easier just to kind of explain things as we go so that when you watch that birth video you kind of understand what's going on a little bit better. I took notes down here on my computer so I can kind of remember everything, but I'm just gonna run through kind of what happened. So I was supposed to be induced on March 9th because my baby was IUGR, and I waited around that day all day and didn't get a phone call. The hospital was way too busy, unfortunately. So along comes March 10th. I got up and did the same thing, got up super early, got all ready, waited for a phone call, and luckily they called me around, I think it was 12:30 p.m. I was just eating lunch and they said, you can come in now, and anyway, so I got all excited, and my mother-in-law came over to watch the girls. We got in the car and we got to the hospital at 2 p.m. on March the 10th. Okay, so then I'm going through this kind of fast because it's a lot of stuff. Once we got to the hospital, I met with my midwife and we went to triage, and they just did a non-stress test on the baby and, you know, like checked me in and did all that good stuff. And then I thought the plan was to start Cervidil. I knew that I had been checked. I was 2 centimeters dilated, which was awesome. All those membrane sweeps had worked. And things were, you know, ripening. And so when I talked to the OB last week, he said he's perfectly fine with me doing Cervidil to kind of get things going, and then they can just break my water and hopefully I won't need oxytocin at all. If you're not familiar with my previous kind of history, my first pregnancy, I was induced with oxytocin, and it was a horrendous experience, and it scarred me, to be honest. It's one of my greatest fears ever, is oxytocin. I've never felt anything quite like that before, and I've had a natural birth. This was just so far above and beyond. My body just went into complete overdrive. I went 0 to 10 centimeters in an hour, and it just completely terrified me. So needless to say, that's the last thing I want to do. So I thought we'd be doing Cervidil. Well, the OB on call was not the OB that I had met with, and she had other plans. She let my midwife know that before we started the induction, she wanted to do an oxytocin challenge test, and I was aware that this existed. What I didn't know was that they made you do it prior to even starting Cervidil, and that there was no option for pain relief during the actual challenge. What it is basically is they hook you up to oxytocin, again the one thing in the world that I hate the most and most scared of, and they keep turning it up until you get 6 contractions in 20 minutes, and it has to be a certain strength level, like they have to be strong enough, and then they watch baby's heart rate to make sure that, because the baby's so small, that the baby can tolerate those contractions. Well, I was not expecting to have to do that right off the bat, and because in my birth plan I said, if you need oxytocin because things aren't moving along, that's fine. I would just like to be on an epidural, even though, you know, I was planning a natural home birth. If I needed oxytocin, I was perfectly okay with getting an epidural because I knew the pain level. So the fact that they wanted to start me off right on the bat with that, it just completely threw me for a loop. I was not ready to make that decision. I basically broke down in triage talking to the OB and my midwife, and the OB's like, I'll give you some time, and we ended up being in triage for almost 5 hours because I just didn't know what to do. This is the first time in my life where I seriously contemplated an elective C-section. Not that there's anything wrong with a C-section, but I've already had 2 natural, like, vaginal deliveries, so there was no need for one, but I was that scared that I was probably about this close to saying, you know what, just schedule me for a C-section. I was worried for the baby too. I don't understand why they had to put me on oxytocin right off the bat. Like, I just felt like that was too much. Like, why stress out the baby in the beginning? Anyways, long story short, after having quite a few emotional breakdowns in triage, I finally decided to go for it because I knew I'd regret it if I didn't, and I just wanted some control over the situation. I told them I wanted them to start on the lowest dose, which is 1. Usually they start at 2 and they kind of go up in intervals of 2, 4, 6. I wanted to start at 1, and if they wanted to increase it, because they're supposed to increase every half an hour, I wanted to be in charge of that. I wanted to make that decision if I was ready or not, and I wanted to go up in increments of 1. And the nurses and staff were, I don't know, I just felt like I fought the whole time, but that's what made me feel comfortable, and finally they agreed to it, even though they just thought it was kind of ridiculous. They just thought I wouldn't progress fast enough or at all on that low a dose. They agreed to it. Okay, so yes, after 5 hours I ended up in a room, and oh, I should say, while this was all occurring, I actually started contracting on my own. I don't know if it was just because of the membrane sweeps, like really great timing, or the stress of this challenge, but my body started contractions and they started to pick them up on the monitor, and I started to have to breathe through them, and I was like, this is amazing, maybe I won't need to do this damn challenge test, maybe my body's just going into labor. So anyways, I went to a room, they hooked me up, and they started Pitocin at a 1, oxytocin, Pitocin, same thing, and I was already contracting on my own, so it just kind of brought them up a level. I can't remember the timing exactly, it is in the video, but it's supposed to go up every half an hour. I think I let them move it up every 45 minutes or so, and in the end they ended up at a total of 4. And 4 is generally kind of where you start on Pitocin or oxytocin, but that's where we ended, because I ended up passing the challenge test on that low of a dose. I got to well over 6 contractions in the 20 minutes, strong enough and everything. My body responds really well to oxytocin, too well, so I didn't need very much, and luckily I was able to cope with the pain. Like, they were getting more and more painful, but I was just so excited when I passed that test. Then the plan had been, if I passed the test, you could turn off oxytocin and continue with the normal induction, Cervidil and break your water or whatever. But at this point, being on a 4, my body was contracting really regularly and they were getting stronger. And when my midwife checked me at the end of the test, I was 3 to 4 centimeters already. So I also had the option to continue the oxytocin, which is the last thing I thought I'd ever do, but get an epidural ahead of time. And by this point, I think it was like 11 o'clock at night, and I was already exhausted, and I was already on oxytocin and coping quite well, but I knew that what could happen once I continue on it. And that's the option I went for, surprisingly. They gave me an epidural. It was 3 to 4 centimeters. So, I mean, I was still coping fine with the pain, but they gave me it because they wanted to up the oxytocin once I had it and break my water. So I was like, you know what, this is great. This is a great plan. I'm okay with that. This baby's going to be out pretty quick. So I got the epidural. It was a really good epidural in the beginning because I could still move everything and I could still feel the contraction coming on, just not the pain of it. I wasn't totally numbed, which was good in the beginning anyways. And then at this point they were supposed to turn the oxytocin up, but the contractions got stronger and closer together all on their own. So there was no need to turn it up at this point, which was crazy because again, I was still only on a 4. And then my midwife came and she broke my water when I was at the 4. And shortly after that, my epidural started to fail and not work as properly. I was only at a 4, but like contraction by contraction I started to feel more and more, and it was more and more painful, and it wasn't just the pressure anymore or the tightness. I was starting to feel the pain. You'll see in the video I was kind of breathing through it. You actually have a button you can hit for like an extra burst of whatever, and you can only hit it twice in the hour. So I hit it the first time and it didn't do anything. I kept getting stronger and I was panicking because I was like, I don't need to feel transition contractions with oxytocin. I've felt those before. Like, I was just panicking that it was going to completely wear off. And my midwife said, hit the button again. I said, I don't want to hit it again because you can only hit it twice in an hour. Like, and I just hit the darn button. And she's like, well, just, you know, do it if you need to. And I was like, okay. And I ended up hitting it like 5 minutes later. I heard the nurse in the video telling the other nurse like she can't hit it again for an hour. And again, it didn't really do anything. By this point, they were getting really intense. Once I hit the button second time and the contractions still felt stronger, I asked them to turn down the oxytocin. I can't believe they actually listened to me, but I guess they could see on the monitor how intense they were. They agreed and they turned it down from a 4 to a 2, which is essentially nothing really for oxytocin, but they turned it down. And then I had this weird like 5 minutes of, I don't even know what was 5 minutes, but it was this weird calmness. I think I only had one contraction in that period of time, and they were all saying, oh, it's because you turned it down to a 2. It was just like this weird calm before the storm. This all happened very quickly. My labors are typically quick. And after this weird calmness, the next one came. It was intense, and then the next one came, and the next one came, and the next one came, and it didn't stop from that point forward. And you'll see in the video, I'm breathing through them, and they're getting stronger. And at one point, my midwife calls the anesthesiologist to come back because the pain's getting, like, it shouldn't be feeling like that basically on epidural. Obviously, it did give me pain relief. It wasn't like I was feeling everything, but it was getting concerning because I was feeling more and more and more. And unfortunately, the anesthesiologist was in the OR doing a C-section, so he couldn't come by anytime soon. And then at one point I felt my body pushing, and I said to my midwife, I think my body's pushing, is that okay? I had my eyes closed, and she's like, okay, let's just check you. And that was all like within an hour at least, and that she had checked me and I had been at 4. And she checked me and she's like, okay, you are fully dilated, the baby's coming, she talked to the nurses, she's like, you need to call peds, you need to call the OB because they needed to have a bunch of people in the room. And I was like, yes. I said in the video, I'm actually feeling this, at least I'm not feeling all this pain for nothing, like my body just took off basically. So yeah, once everybody was in the room, it was a very full room because I needed a pediatrician. I think there was 2 or 3 nurses, the OB, my midwife, and then the people I had in the room with me. It was a very full room. I only ended up pushing 3 times to push her out. Mind you, she was a very tiny baby, but I could feel her coming out, which I guess helped a lot. The epidural really wore off at that point because I felt everything as she came out. I didn't tear, which is good. I didn't need any stitches or anything like that, but I did have a little rip, and I felt that happen. So anyways, pushed her out in 3 pushes, and she came out, and they put her right up on my chest, which I wasn't sure if they were going to do. They kind of had to assess how she did when she came out, and she started crying like 2 seconds after she came out. I was like, oh my goodness, thank goodness. So they let her stay on me till the cord stopped pulsating. They didn't just whisk her away, so I got that moment, which is nice, and we looked and found out that she was a girl, and yeah, it was just very exciting. I'm trying to think what happened next. They cut the cord, and the pediatrician wanted to look her over, so he did the whole baby exam, and she checked out. She weighed 5 pounds 1 ounce, so she's quite a little baby. But then they brought her back to me for some skin-to-skin time, which was super nice. And one thing that I thought was not expecting anyways, especially with her being so small, was that as soon as they put her on me, and you'll see this in the video, she started rooting right away. I guess she must have been really hungry in there, I don't know, but started rooting right away. So I, started breastfeeding her right away, and she figured it out right away, which was awesome. There was no issues there. We're having a little bit of issues now just because her mouth is so small because she's a small baby, but she picked up on how to nurse right away, and she's been nursing fine ever since, which was just awesome. The midwife delivered my placenta, and she brought it over to me and showed me that it didn't look quite right. It didn't look as healthy and plump, and I can't remember the word she used to describe it as normal, but she could tell there was definitely something wrong with the way it was functioning. So it got sent to pathology. I wanted to keep it, but it got sent. We need to figure out what's wrong with it. I guess it takes 3 weeks for those results to come back. So it's a good thing baby came out. The placenta, there's definitely an issue with it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. She was born at 1:57 a.m. in the morning, and she got to stay with me ever since. They checked her blood sugar levels right away, and initially it was quite low. I guess that's something that can happen to little babies. So even though she was nursing, they insisted that she needed a formula, and I talked to a lactation consultant in the hospital actually, and she said there are a couple circumstances where we do recommend strongly that you give your child formula over breastfeeding. Well, you can breastfeed too, but just until they get their blood sugars up to a certain level, and also if they're jaundiced. She didn't experience any jaundice, but her blood sugars were quite alarmingly low, and they said if you don't give her formula, we're taking her to the NICU and giving her it through her nose or whatever, that tube. So as much as I didn't want to give her formula because she was breastfeeding so well, I had to that first like half a day, and they kept pricking her heel to check her blood sugars, which was so sad, but luckily everything leveled out and we haven't had to use any since. She's been nursing exclusively ever since. So yeah, that's pretty much it for my labor and delivery story. This was probably the most uneventful labor and delivery I've ever had. I can't believe how smoothly it went. Even when I was pushing, I was like, am I really pushing right now? Like, yeah, you know, it hurt when I could feel the contractions, but nothing compared to my previous two, obviously because of the epidural, even though it was wearing off. It just was really smooth, and I'm just so thankful that the labor went smooth and the baby is healthy and the baby got to come home. So it's all good news. I'm going to record right after this just an update on baby Cassidy so you can see her and I can tell you how she's doing, and then shortly behind that you'll see my actual labor and delivery footage. So if you have any questions, leave them down in the comment below, and thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. I thought I'd real quick throw in a clip of Miss Cassidy at the end here so you can see her. She's just sleeping on me. There she is. That's what she does most of the day. Can I see you? There she is. Yeah, that's Miss Cassidy.